Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner here upon YouTube. My name's Angela, and I love drawing. In fact, so much so it is how I earn a part of my income. But I also like to help people learn and to encourage people. I was a science teacher for 28 years, and you can take the person out of teaching, but you can't take the teacher out of the person. So if what I do helps you, encourages you, shows you things that you can do in a simple way, gives you hints and tips and words of encouragement, then, and it works for you, then I'm doing a good job, even if it's just one of you. But I'm sure there's a number of people who find it useful. So thank you so much if you're returning and you've subscribed. I appreciate you so much. And for the thumbs ups and likes for my videos, thank you also. There's something about a YouTube algorithm that these things possibly help, along with comments, and I don't know. I'm just doing the best I can. It's raw. I don't edit much, if at all, if I can help it. You get me as I am. Mistakes, slip-ups, misspeaks, and so on. I'm not making a cinematic documentary or anything. So this is yesterday's drawing. I haven't done anything to it. I haven't even erased the pencil lines. There were reasons. I'll talk about those later. So here's a fresh page today in my my sketchbook, and I am going to draw some flowers. Today's Wednesday, so I need to spend some time drawing a colouring template for the Angela Porter's Colouring Book Fans Facebook group. And sometimes a lot of the time I'll draw on things that I've been doing here with you and make use of those in my sketchbook. And I was looking through my visual dictionary just now, or my Zibaldoni, or my commonplace book, or my reference, you know, my collection of patterns and motifs. I haven't really come up with a really good word for it. It's not really a sketchbook, but in some ways it is. But anyway, and I saw this one, this flower, which starts in the middle with a nice circle, and I am going to pop a couple of lines, arc lines in it like that, to give it a feeling that we've got shadow on this side, but also those curved lines give that suggestion of shadow here. Perhaps I'll extend those two just a little, and then I'm going to put smaller circles as if there's a square around this in a circle, the centre of the flower, and then I'm going to use this point to draw the petals from. So start one side of this circle, up, over, round and down. Now by all means rotate your book or paper if you're going to, or if you're more comfortable to. I find when I see a lot of that going on, and I can end up spinning my paper around an awful lot, that it gets quite dizzy. So that's my first version of this particular flower. And I really like it. I like the gaps between, because that gives me options of putting things like leaves in there or other petals. But I'm going to look for some variations as well. So I'm going to carry on popping these circles there. And perhaps this time I'll do a more loopy petal, because that looks quite nice. And perhaps instead of doing those there, I'm just going to pop some dots around the edge like that. Let's try another variation. You know, I've said that I'm doing a lettering course. Well, let me do that. Heart shape. So just going to fit heart-shaped petals in here. So yeah, I'm doing a lettering course, and one of the things that you do in this is that you draw letters or alphabets over and over, varying things as much as you can to come up with ideas of letters that perhaps you've never thought of, perhaps nobody else has ever done, or perhaps other people have done but you never have done, but you've kind of discovered it on your own. and then work with a letter that's got a variation in to create a alphabet you like, or to use as a lettering style for a piece of lettering art. You get the idea? And I realised how comfortable I was with doing this, because I've been doing this for long enough to realise that it's not that difficult perhaps to create variations of a motif or a pattern. It's just being able to see that it's not trying to do everything at once. It's those little changes you make, or the little additions that you make, that change one thing into another. So just simply here, by changing things from these sort of like, I don't know what kind of shape, almost like truncated triangles. It's like the point of the triangles tucked under here. So the more loopy ones to the ones that are heart-shaped. Then, and the centres as well, which you can interchange. These have changed automatically. And there's something rather fun about it. So let me just do this in a different way. I'm going to pop a circle in the middle there. I'm trying to think, can we do another shape of leaf petal? Of course we can, because some petals on plants are kind of pointy at the end, aren't they? So let's do that one. So that works quite nicely as well. Okay, so any other variations? Well, I'm going to draw perhaps a bigger centre. That's a heck of a centre. And I'm going to pop, perhaps I'll pop 3 circles around it as well. So let's have a look at what happens here. I'm going to do the more traditional, almost leaf-shaped petals there. So just by changing the number of circles here, we get a different kind of flower, but it's very similar to this. It's just that I've got more space between these circles in order to get the wider petals. So let's do a smaller circle and see how that changes things. So let me do this. So more delicate, perhaps, a more delicate flower. So if we can do 4, or 4 and 3, perhaps we can do 5. So let me just move my book over just a tad here. There we go. A bit more challenging, because you've now got to work out where 5 of these go. They only need to be roughly equally spaced. You know, I tend to go this way with, rather than a triangle that's broad at the bottom, I make it narrower and then split the distance between them. I don't know if that makes any sense. So let's have a look here. So I'm going to do, I think this one would look nice with long thin petals, but the petals are flaring out at the end. So that's quite pretty. I like that one. And I'll do another one with 5, but I'll make the centre bigger, because that will give us more spacing between these ones here. Now, if I was going to draw a triangle, 3 of them, I'd go here roughly with an equilateral triangle, but I don't want to. I want to move them just that little bit closer together, and then I'm going to split the difference between them. It's not equidistant, but it's not perfection is required for this. So with this one, I'm going to do shorter petals that just loop around, like so. And again, that's just created yet another flower we could use. Okay, so we could do 6. I'm going to do a whopping great big circle, because that means I can get a broader start on my petals here. I really quite like the way the petals have this gap, this space between them. There's something lovely about that. So I'm just going to pop a single circle in there. Perhaps this one I'll do a couple of those, and this one I'm just going to pop a single kind of orb in the middle. This one needs something as well. I'm just going to do a simple circle. Perhaps of these I will start to add shadow now, so I start to add some feeling of volume or dimension to the drawings. And I'm just bearing in mind that when I'm just drawing things without trying to make them look like they exist in a real environment, as in having a definite light source, I tend to put my shadows to the left and bottom. It's the first thing I do. If I try to do it the other way around, I can get very confused. So let's try and do this one the other way around. So I'll put the outer one's the right and out, and this one's the bottom and left and bottom. And you've got a different feeling to that. This one will just be left and bottom, left and bottom, left and bottom. Of course, you can add shadows to these as well if we wish. But I'm tempted just to leave them, because once you can add things later on. Okay, so let's go back to the first one. And here I've got little circles, but what about if we put different shapes there? How about if we put, say, little teardrop shapes instead? Like this. How will this change how this looks? Well, it gives us the option of doing exactly the same as we've done before. But there's another option with this, which I will do here. I'm going to stick to 4 for now. But instead of starting from the middle, we could start the petal part way up the teardrop. Perhaps, oops, that one went in the wrong direction. When you change something drastically, it becomes something you have to think about a bit more. So that brings those teardrop shapes more to the front of the petals, because they're overlapping them. Here they're side by side, and with this one I'm going to use this to create a variation. So if you do make a mistake with your pen, just do something with it. So this one, I could create, let's have a look at making this inside here, perhaps darker with some lines. I'm able with this Fudenasuki pen to draw fairly thin lines, not as thin as when it was brand new, but still pretty thin. Just going to pop a tiny hole in the middle. And with this one, I could have put a small hole in the centre there, but here I chose to do something that was that little bit bigger. There we are. If I go back to this one, I can start to add detail inside the petals. I often like to put something that looks like a smaller petal inside, like that. And let's just add the shadow here. And again, I'm going to add a circle in the middle, but I'm offsetting it from the centre. And again, that gives that feeling of volume or dimension there. This feels quite flat, like a washer, whereas this feels like it's a berry almost, or something that's round, because we've got something that draws our eye almost up and over, as it were. So other embellishments could be stamen with the blobs of pollen on the ends. I've put them in as black dots, but we could put them in as clear ones, or we can add the clear ones at the ends. This one, I'm going to do like 3 little frilly bits at the bottom, but not letting them touch the side of the petal. That one I can only fit 2 in, but I thought that would be quite nice. This one, I'm just going to draw thin lines and finish those off with a couple of dots. Just simple things where we can just vary how these look. So let's have a look at this one. The bigger the petal, the more you can do. So I like these borders made of 2 lines like that. But here I'm going to have a look. I'm going to add, so we're going this way. Yeah. Like a spiral in the middle. A bit more challenging to put those in so they all go in the same direction. That's because I'm fussy about such things, but you can actually do them as you wish. They all face in the same direction. So that's quite nice. This one, I think I'm just going to pop some lines in, a bit like that, but just straight lines in the 3 of them. This one, let's pop a long thin shape in there. This one is the opportunity to add that heart shape in. And if we add shadow to the left and the bottom of each of these, then we start to get a great feeling of volume. Doesn't take long to do because you're just following the lines you've already drawn. So there we can see that those, hopefully you can see, oh I'm sorry you've missed these, I was off camera. This one I've just done, so all I've done is thicken these lines. This one here I just added some thin lines. This one I've put a border in, and then I've drawn these little spirals with a dot at the end, so they all sort of like, the first stroke is taken in a anti-clockwise direction towards, well, anti-clockwise is the best way in each case to create that. This one, just long thin lines in there. Okay. This one, I'm going to put these kinds of, almost like a little, the petals folded it up on itself just a little. Like so. Which is quite cute. And for this one, I'll draw this one again over here. It's not going to be identical, but you'll get the idea. Because the ends of these petals look quite truncated, sometimes it's nice just to pop this kind of shape in as if they're curled over, or as a variation, I'll just move down to the next line. Again, I'm just popping the same thing in. Perhaps I'll have that one more square, and then just that one with it curled over, and the others have got a more rounded end. So that's a bit more perhaps believable than having them all curled over, but either way will work. It just depends what you, I say believable or natural, but it just depends what you want. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, loads of things. The world is your oyster when it comes to shapes of petals. So another way to shape petals is a kind of variation on a heart, I suppose, sort of. So here we go, and instead of having one dip at the end, we're having 3 of them. Like that. Again, I'll put something in the centre. And this again would be quite nice to add thicker lines to add that dimension. I'm not going to do that to all of them because it gets a bit tedious, I think, and you certainly must probably get the idea by now. Well, I'm going to do them all because it really doesn't take that long. But to the left and to the bottom, and then that gives some dimension there. And for this one, I think I might like to just have perhaps some dots going down from each of these towards the base of the petal. This petal feels that it's curved, so let's make those rows of little dots a little bit more on the curved side like that. And that would work quite nicely. Other things to do, okay, so if I go back to my original one, I always like to go back and reference one that I've got that I started with, because it's easy then to pick out the variations, I suppose, or easy to judge if the ideas are good or not. It's easy enough to see the variations along the way here. So this is perhaps the plainest one of all. So let's leave the petals as they are. What about adding something here? So some leaves perhaps in between them. Now those leaves look pretty ornate compared to the petals, so let's do something with the petals. And just simply add a shape like that. So that's quite nice. And again, the more you draw something, the easier it becomes to draw that thing. But the strokes you're creating, by using your hand, your eye, you're also improving hand-eye coordination and muscle memory. So the more that you practice, the more that you do things, the easier it is and the better you get at it. I've had decades of doing this, and you know, the precision came with scientific observation more than anything else. So here, instead of starting the leaf at the bottom, I've started it right at the top here, and I will put that centre line in to say this is a leaf and not a petal. And with these petals, I'm going to pop in 3 of these stamen, the centre one longer than the 2 on either side. And don't fret about making them all exactly the same, no length. If one of these shorter ones is shorter than the other, that's fine. And then we need to do something here in the middle. And I'm also going to add almost like 4 little petals in there. So 4 little semicircles almost, crescent moons without the dark bit at the bottom. And that gives a different centre as well. So that's quite nice. And if you wanted to add more dimension, it's thickening the lines, or I'll go to my finer pen, is if we add lines really close together on one side of the leaf and further apart on the other. So close together on this side, further apart on this side. As we go round to the next section, if they're far apart here, in the next one they need to be close together, so that you're repeating that pattern all the way around. Further apart, close together, and then further apart, so we get a feeling of shadowing with those going on there. So that's quite nice. Okay, what about using different shapes in the middle? So there's probably no flowers exist like this, but they can in my sketchbook. So I'll use a square with a square inside, and again 4 circles here. For this one, I'm going to think about the diagonal line here and where the point of the petal would be. I'm going to use that point to help me draw the petal in. And again, they don't have to be perfect, but it's just nice because it's a different arrangement to think about where do I want the petal to end. They're not identical. This one's skinnier than the others. This one looks a bit shorter and wider, but matters not. So with this one, I'm just going to pop smaller versions of the petals coming off the points of this, and perhaps a circle at the top. These circles are a great way of separating the petals, of spreading them out. I quite like that, but how about if we do a square again, but this time I put the circles in the middle of the lines. How about if we pop them on the corner? The wider space at the bottom here allows me to have different shaped petals, and I will aura these like so. So that creates something that is a bit different, or quite a bit different from the others in its way. So that's something that I can play with even more if I want to. Again, it can be, you know, I've put the square that way on, but I could draw it with the points to the top. But that way suits me because most of my petals are going upwards. This is the odd exception where they are going off in this direction. But it all depends on where you put these dots and where you want the petals to go. So that's quite nice. I like that one. Do another square. Again, I'll pop these on the corner, and then perhaps we can do this kind of shape. There seems to be an awful lot of space here, and the shapes of petals tend to end up quite square at the bottom. So I'm thinking about do another square. I'm going to pop a fairly large circle at the corner, and then I'm going to pop smaller ones on either side. Like that. And then we get more space between the petals, but perhaps a more natural petal shape. And those extra little dots there are perfect for adding an outer aura. And we still keep that interest of those dots at the bottom. And I think what would be nice here is just to finish this off with a leaf shape in the middle. Lots of layers, lots of things that can be done. And in that middle bit, you know what I'm going to do? Well, I hope you know what I'm going to do. On 2 of them, I'm going to put perks in those leaf shapes. But this one, I'm going to pop the perks in that middle border just to see the difference. Again, there's nothing wrong with trying different things out on the same motif and drawing. It's a good way of comparing them, which effect you like the most. So I'm feeling a bit perky. I quite like both. This one's more interesting in some ways than this one. I think this one feels happy. It feels nicer to me than this one, but that could just be me. It's almost like I'd want to fill the whole of this space with perk, which I will then go and do here, and perhaps start with the biggest one at the bottom and work my way out. With these, I started at the top and worked my way down, and you do get a different feeling from them as you do that. So I'll do that one, and then I'll do this one too, like so, and then we can see that, and that's quite nice. Quite like that. Okay, so what about some other shapes? The variations are endless here, you know, for putting leaves in and other things. So with all the extra space here, the leaf for this particular flower could be a three-lobed leaf, like so, either with the lines or not, or just one. Actually, with just one looks rather good, and not finishing at the end. So again, because it's my sketchbook, I can vary what I can do, and I know I like these more than I like this one. Simpler, because this is really quite busy. Other shapes for the centre, well, you could use pentagons, hexagons, because we've got these shapes, but it does change how you can put, or the shapes of the petals, depending whether you put the points on the corners or in the middle of the lines that form them. So think of the two, I quite like them, even though I've used them on the corner here. I quite like putting these in the middle of these lines. Like so, and then using that as where I draw my petals from. Like so. And oops, that's okay, and perhaps put a circle in the middle. It looks like a bit of a nut. You know, you have nuts and bolts. I've got a nut and bolt in the middle here. Very steampunky-ish, possibly not. So if I do this again with, oh, it's going to be a bigger one. No matter, but put these circles on the corners. Then I'm going to get this kind of squared off petal at the bottom again, because my pentagon here isn't as evenly shaped. We're getting a different kind of thing going on. So there's that. But as I was drawing that, something came to me that if that's what we want to do, or as an alternative, in all of these, between these particular shapes, all we've done is put one petal in. So what about if we put, in this case, perhaps 3 petals in, the middle one longer than the outside one, so we end up with a more frilly arrangement. And frilly is good. So again, I'll do pentagon and the circle in the middle. Completely nutty flowers. So that's a different one. You could keep them the same length. And then these parts here, I haven't done that on any of them, have I? Is use these as something to grow off. Let's have a look. Add that on that one. Have a look here because we haven't got stamen anywhere else on that one, so add that there. So that's another way of adding some kind of embellishment. All a lot of fun. I'm thinking, what else? I think I've done enough for now because other things will come to me. I think some of the things that will come to me is what to do with the centres. So I'm going to draw some centres down here because I haven't really got enough space to add any more. So another way of filling the centre in would be to do something like this, where we put little circles in there. I like to make the lines thicker at the top and to the right of them, so it looks like we've got little holes in there, a bit like lotus seeds. And perhaps we can make these lines a little bit thicker. So that's quite fun. Another way of adding that sense of shadow is by putting perhaps some lines like that, and perhaps just a couple more there, and perhaps some tiny ones over there. Another way of adding pattern and texture, and I will pick up my 01 micron here, is to put petals facing inwards. Just thinking here, I could almost do with something like a card game where each card has got an element of a flower on, and perhaps it's got a series of elements of flowers on. You roll a dice to pick one, and then you pick another card at random, but you can't have the same. Yeah, you get the idea. So that's quite fun because it looks like there's something, in the sort of like towards the middle, there's something in there. Another simple one. Showing these really quite big. Bend the lines. Doesn't matter which. I'm bending them towards the top here, and if I go this side, I'm going to bend them up towards this edge, like so. And it's sort of like a very stylized way of drawing, like the inside of a sunflower, but you get a lovely pattern there. You could do it, we can do it just with lines as well. So let me just move this around. So I'm going to draw lines close together. So we can stripe this. So you can either leave them just as lines like this, or perhaps lines with a broken bit in it, so we get that idea of perhaps some kind of reflectiveness or texture. And the other one is to do some stripes. And however you like to fill these stripes in to leave a highlight, I like to colour either side of a line, is to draw where I want the little highlight in, and then fill it in on either side. Other people like to leave it fairly not quite so sharp to have some texture. Let me see if I can do that. So you flick and you leave that like that, so we've got that kind as a centre. Another one. Again, lots of options here. Make the dots very dense to the left and the bottom, and then gradually make the dots smaller and less dense. So the denser the dots are, the darker the shadow. So there's some options there. done one that's multi. So instead of, I'll do another one that's got lots of rings in it, like this one up here. This one up here, I put all the shadows to the left and bottom. So let me start with that here, because these would stick up above the petals, but then the next one will make it thicker to the top and right, left and bottom, top and right. So that one feels like you've got a series of sort of like washers, I suppose, put together, for want of a better idea. So you get that sense of dimension there. And in this, you could also pop lines like this, just to fill it in with some pattern. And you could do that with any of them, you know. The world's your oyster, as it were. You can fill it with tipple. Again, it depends how big you draw these centres, what you can do. I'm getting bigger in my drawings often, so there we go. It's just another one there. Just a few ideas, but I'm sure I have not exhausted the possibilities. So, shall I add some shadow to these for you? Shall I? Why not? Let me pick a pencil. Oh, as I throw them over. Oh, well, that's that flat, that's why. Okay, let me see if I can find... Yeah, I've got the Madder Brown, which I do like. I do like this one. I do like the Madder Brown. So for this one, I'm just going to pop some of this Inktense right at the base, where it's going to be quite dark. And then gradually pull it out until there's practically no colour. I'm not going to leave a white highlight here. I'm going to use this to fill all of this in, getting slowly lighter towards the tip of the petal. But I know I can always come back with a white gel pen or a white ink of some kind to alter this. Right, can go on my hand. It will wash off my skin. It's permanent on paper and fabrics, but my skin, it'll be fine. So here I'm putting the shadow first and foremost darkest underneath that little fold, and then I'm going to just ease it out that little bit. And underneath the fold, but also around the centre of the flower, and then just gradually move it out a little bit. It's like with this, the more I'm using Inktense or colour in this kind of way, the easier I'm finding it to do it, and the happier I am with the results. Practice. So there's that one. This one, I'm going to create some shadows. The petal at the back, I'm definitely going to make it a little bit darker than the one at the front, which will need a little bit of shadow there. But I'm going to leave the top of it pretty much uncoloured. So we have quite a bit of colour on the bottom one and not so much on the top one. Just using what's residual on my brush there. So this really is a good way for me to practice, and for yourselves as well. And where I'm explaining how I'm doing this, you know, other people will do this in a different way. I'm not saying there's a wrong way and a right way to do this. Maybe there is. Maybe more proficient artists with the use of colour know this. But I think you just find your own way eventually, and there seems to be as many ways of adding colour as there are artists. You know, some people have got very similar methods or identical methods, and some share their wisdom of what works for them. But I know from taking courses and so on that the way some artists work just isn't, it just doesn't work for me. I think it's because with watercolours I tend to like to have some level of control over them. It's kind of a medium that's considered not very controllable. Water, what can I say? Can you control the seas? King Canute thought he could. Have command over the ocean and tell the tide not to come in, to flood the lands or whatever, and he was wrong. So that's one of the most probably made a mess of that tale. It's King Canute. Spelt anglicised as Canute, but I think in Anglo-Saxon texts it was Knut. Knut. I think. I could be wrong there. My head, shed, comes to mind. I'm not going to do all of the petals on this one because again it is like watching ink tints dry. But just paying attention to where I want the darkest colour and where I want the lightest colour. And if I want to darken the tips of the petals up just that little bit to give that feeling that they are bending, I can always go back and add that little bit of colour, especially when they've dried. Let me just go back here. I need to move this a little bit so that I'm not going to put my hand in what's wet. If I just put a tiny bit there, I'm going to clean the brush off so I can just make sure that the base of the petal is perhaps just a lot darker than the base here. Tip is a lot darker than the base. So we'll just adjust that. Perhaps the sides need a bit more darkness. But as it dries, they'll fade and you'll see. So that enhances the feeling that that petal might curve up and over. As to these, well, I think I'd want to pop, these being the centres, I think I'd want to pop a shadow here. Or some colour here to go underneath that outer ring. But then I'm going to start to increase the shadow with each layer within, so the colour becomes darker. I'm not going to fuss around trying to keep everything within the lines here. I'm just going to do this quickly. And perhaps just darken that even a bit more there. Might need a little bit more here, like so, and then we've got the highlights there, so it looks like the outer ring are pointing upwards a bit and catching the light, and the other ones are still inside that bud, which is quite good. It's amazing how just a little bit of colour or a little bit of shadow works. It's funny how I keep cycling back to colours to use, and how much I'm using these Inktense pencils as a way of adding shadow to my work. And even colour. So I quite like this kind of vintagey kind of feel to the colours here. Sepia, you know, the old sepia photographs. I went out for a walk yesterday. Yes, I know. And I actually didn't go to the graveyard, to the cemetery, which I love to walk around. But I haven't been there for a while, for a number of months, and so I won't be going today. It's a bit damp out, to say the least, and I've got things I need to do. But I went to my local town and had a walk up and down the main street. I actually bought a really nice teapot. It's glass and it's got a thingy in the middle for infusing your tea in. And I thought I had one that had a plunger in. And I'm sure the one I picked up had a plunger, but I didn't check on the one that she got out of the store cupboard. The woman who was working there, so I also picked some tea up. But there was a tea and coffee shop, and coffee particularly, and lots of lovely stuff in there, I have to say. And I picked some tea up as well. I got some chai, and what was the other one I got? Oh, black tea with cinnamon. So black tea with chai spices and black tea with cinnamon. But all around the walls there were empty coffee bags, and so I've got photographs of those, you know, as reference for lettering and arranging letters and so on, which is quite good fun. But there's nothing else. I also found on a wall there was a letter, hand lettered sign or lettering on the wall that said household goods. And it's really, really old. It's faded and parts of the paint are missing. And I can't even remember what shop was there when I was a child, you know, to remember if there was a house. Well, there would have been a shop that was household goods there, but I can't for the life of me remember what it was. So that was interesting. But those fadedness, it seems to appeal to me a lot these days, and sort of rusty and verdigris colours do. I like bright colours. It depends what I'm doing, but I'm finding this kind of vintagey feeling is really rather nice in my sketchbook. And this paper takes these quite nicely with just damp paper, and it's just a way of adding that colour and texture to them. So what was I rambling on before I went on about my local town? I ramble a lot. I'm making no excuses, it's me. So yeah, so the way to find out how a particular medium works for you is to work with it, to try different things out. You know, I love the convenience of this water brush because it's always damp, and I also don't have the possibility of a great disaster as I knock a pot of water over. I'm sure you can get some no-spill pots. I'll have to look into that perhaps. But this does for me, and of course it's portable, so that when I finally work up my, build up my courage perhaps, or my ability to remember how to manage social anxiety or flex those muscles again, and I want to go to places drawing, especially when the weather's a bit warmer and nicer, then I'll have the option of taking this with me so that I can do quick washes of shadow if I wish. So and just a couple of colours. But yeah, so just finished part of this off. I don't have a green in the Inktense in my pencil pots, because I think flowers should have a greeny colour to them. But I do have something that is greenish in the Graphitint, which, while not permanent, it does the same kind of job, I suppose. Except I won't be putting the graphite bit down. Let's have a look. Okay, that one will do. What's this one's? Slate green. That'll do fine. Just picking some of the green up from it. The Graphitint's a mixture of graphite and coloured dye particles, and they are going to be dyed because they always react with water. They're not permanent dyes or inks, whereas with Inktense you've got permanent inks in there. So that little bit of green just starts to give some definition perhaps to these. So if I try to get a lot more colour up on this side, then we can make use of the lines and the suggestion. There's a lot more light there. I do want to pay a bit of attention to where shadows would be though, and it's going to be where objects overlap, so you will naturally have a shadow underneath those areas. But with these we can go back and add more, just like with the Inktense when we want to. So I hope that has helped. I mean, it's a sketchbook page, it doesn't have to be finished, and it takes the pressure off having to produce things that are perfect, that are ready to go, that are, you know, to be made into cards or given as gifts or framed or whatever. A sketchbook is very valuable for exploring and trying things out. And this from yesterday, I haven't scanned it in. Next job, I'll scan it in as it is before I add colour, because then I've got the scanned in version I can make use of. I can either redraw or edit as I feel fit and make use of it in other ways, because I do like this one. This one is finished except for colour. That's where I go wrong, hence why I'm going to colour it in. But it's going to end up, once I've scanned it in and coloured it, in my sketchbook. So it'll end up on this page, and there may be some writing underneath it, or perhaps some other drawings under there, just to fill that page in, because I don't like to waste paper. You might have noticed that. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that it's given you some ideas of things to do, and perhaps has inspired you to go, right, I think you could have done this, so I'm going to do it. Or I'd like to see what happens with this shape, because these variations down here, I've only used a very small number of shapes of petals or ways that you can embellish them compared to the others. It's mix and match. Take ideas from one and put it with another. Change things up as you see fit. Observe flowers for shapes of petals, or make them up. Nobody says that they have to be symmetrical. You know, as I'm talking, you know, there's that. Let me have a quick look here. If I do this quickly, a circle. Let's put those 4 lines in. Nobody says that you have to make them identical in any way. I've tried to make them point, you know, sort of like asymmetric, and the petals are asymmetric, because there will be flowers that look like that. It depends on the way that you're looking and so on. Play with it, have fun. And if you share on social media, tag me, because I'd love to see, I really would. So I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me this morning. I was going to try and do a quick video. It's nearly an hour long again, but I just hope that you've enjoyed. So take care. If you've enjoyed it, thumbs up. If you've subscribed, thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And drop a comment. A nice one would be lovely. Perhaps saying which one of these you like, or what petal shapes I've missed out, or anything like that. And I'll see you again soon. Take care for now. Bye.